Welcome to UO Today. I'm Barbara Altmann, Director of the Oregon Humanities Center. Our guest today is Jill Hartz, the new director of the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art. Jill comes to us from the University of Virginia Museum of Art, where she served as director for 10 years. While there, she managed staff in connection with collections and traveling exhibits, all in the midst of major facility improvements. Under her guidance, the museum earned national accreditation from the American Association of Museums in 1999. Prior to working at the UVA Art Museum, Jill served as the exhibitions coordinator and director of public relations and publications at the Herbert F. Johnson Museum of Art at Cornell University. Jill started work at the U of O in August. Jill, welcome to campus.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you for taking the time to speak with us when it's a very busy moment for you.
Oh, I'm delighted to spread the word.
Good. Let's back up just a little and figure out how you got here. Eugene is a long way from Charlottesville, Virginia. What factors help you make the decision to come to Eugene and take on the Schnitzer?
Well, there were a number of factors, and I have to say I've been really fortunate to be able to live in great university towns. So between Ithaca and Charlottesville and now Eugene, I think it's right up there. So that's very appealing to me. And it's really the Schnitzer first that attracted me in terms of seeing what the museum has in its collections, its scope of activities, its capabilities in terms of its facilities and staff. It's really exciting. I think that at UVA, as you mentioned, we did a lot of facility improvements, but we were in the beginning of a building campaign for a new museum. So the UVA museum had only 6,000 square feet of gallery space. You know, you could probably fit, 4 of them into the Schnitzer easily. So the idea of not having to go through the whole facility building and all of that, but just to jump right ahead into a building that was better than I could have even imagined myself was great, because then it's like, okay, everything's here now, we can get going. And I love challenges. I love being able to say what's the best way to do things and what can we do with the museum here. And I wouldn't be the right person to come in if everything were going perfectly and just don't mess it up. But the idea that it's really open and that people here are really open to change and ideas, and the sky's the limit really. So that's incredibly exciting.
You come as the museum is celebrating its 75th year of existence, and you've mentioned openness to new ideas as one of its strengths. What else do you see as the Jordan Schnitzer Museum's strengths?
Well, I think it's certainly the collections are amazing collections, particularly in the Asian area, and we're slowly filling in other areas in Western art. But as you know, the Asian galleries in particular are absolutely beautiful, and I think we have one of the first Korean art galleries that was ever created in a museum in the West, and it's nice to be at the front edge for that. But beyond the collections, I think it was amazing to me that the museum had scheduled the Cuba avant-garde show, for instance, which is something I think that is not in keeping with the kind of shows it may have had in the past, but really marked an openness to bring art that you wouldn't see otherwise in this area, and to try something more experimental and reaching out to different audiences. So I think that having, I have to also say it's the staff, having met the people that I would be working with full-time every day, I think they're wonderful, and they have so many ideas and are so eager to take the museum to the next stage that those are definite strengths. The university itself has, as you know, many wonderful programs, and I look forward to learning more about them and using the museum as a way of providing the visual focus for anything that could happen. Is there a visual focus to whatever subject someone might be doing in business or science, or the arts, of course, are a lot easier than that, but how can we make ourselves, a really integral academic resource for the whole community is, great exploration, and I think exploration, pioneer work, all of that fits in well with Oregon. And then I think, we're half as old as Oregon itself, because Oregon's celebrating its 150th, and we're celebrating our 75th, but we're still actually really young.
You've mentioned at least 6 different things that I'd like to get back to in your response just now, but seeing as we have the beautiful catalog for the Cuba Avant-Garde show with us here on the table, let's talk a little bit about that show. It opens tomorrow, correct?
It opens with a reception tomorrow that's open to the public from 6 to 9 p.m. And we will have Jessie Marquez, who is singing and has gone back to Havana, I think, regularly to learn more about Cuban music. And it's just a real treat for us. And then we'll have some Cuban refreshments as well. And we really look forward to seeing what, the response is to that show. We've done some unusual things, I think, which I hope will become standard for the museum, including really trying to build audiences based on particular exhibitions that we have, both on campus and off. So this one gave us a really interesting opportunity to reach out to Spanish-speaking constituents, including students that are taking Spanish or studying Latin American culture, as well as all the different Latino and Hispanic groups in the larger community, and how they could start thinking about the Schnitzer as their museum too.
You mentioned to me in conversation that you're making an effort to provide tours, audio tours in Spanish.
Mm-hmm. And I think part of this was spurred not just because it's a Cuban show, but the catalog is bilingual. We realized it would be important to make the labels for the show bilingual. And one step started leading to the next. If we do this, what happens with that? So we have a timeline about Cuba in the exhibition that we prepared. And then we thought, well, it's not fair just to have that in a special exhibition. What happens with the rest of the museum? And it's at this point beyond our resources to really do bilingual labels everywhere in the museum, so we decided we would do an iPod tour of the rest of the galleries. So that's been really great, and we've been working again with a number of Latino leaders in recording. So they might say, I'm so-and-so, and you're now in this gallery, and if you look here, you'll see this and that. So we're hoping that people will take advantage of those and let us know if they work and how we can make them better. But we'll start that way, and then eventually maybe we'll be able to have iPod tours in 6, 7 languages. We'll see.
I see some of the experimental aspects you were talking about, but I wanted to ask you about this as well. It was a very happy coincidence that there was a Cuba show planned just as you were coming in as director. You do have a background in Cuban art.
And it's really interesting because it was one of those other things when you said what attracted you to the Schnitzer, looking at the exhibition schedule and saying, well, I think I could be really great, as the director because of this or because of that. But with the Cuba show in particular, I've been to Cuba twice. I've taken one museum group there, and we went on an art and architecture tour throughout Cuba. And the second time I went with a group of collectors and met with artists primarily and, bought work. And after the first time, I just fell in love with the people I met and thought that the vibrancy and the importance of the art that was being created was second to none. And I still think that. I haven't been back in about 5 or 6 years, so I don't know what the scene is now and whether that still exists. And the second time, the opportunity to meet a number of the artists that are actually in this show that still live in Cuba was, a rare and amazing opportunity, and to really get a sense of both the passion and the hardships they endure in order to create art and to live the way they live. So I don't think it's only Cuba that's like that. I think a lot of countries where there's hardships, the art can be going through really interesting ways of expressing both the personal and the national problems or challenges that are going on, the identity issues. So it's, on the one hand, it's kind of a sense of guilt in benefiting from the hardships of others, but also knowing that it really manifests in an amazing way what the psyche is of a nation.
So you would say that there's a political element to this show, whether it's explicit or a little less obvious?
Absolutely, and I think that it's all political. I think Cubans don't separate out the personal from the political. I think that's why you'll see a lot of metaphoric work in the show that you'll enjoy on one level. The more you know about Cuba, the more you'll understand what else is in it. There are a lot of images that to Cubans, they'll know immediately what's going on with these works. For us, it's like, well, I know there's something going on here, but I don't quite know all the details. But the more you learn, as with anything else, the more you can appreciate the different layers and what they're doing.
Can you talk about some of the other shows that are coming up as well after the Cuba Avant-Garde?
Well, the Cuba show will be up through early January, and then because, as you mentioned, we're celebrating our 75th, we're devoting from January through April, I believe, to an exhibition that features works in the collection, which is called Lasting Legacies, Our First 75 Years. So we will be highlighting works that are in our permanent collection galleries, as well as selecting works that may not have been on view for very often, or new works, and putting those in our major Barker special exhibition galleries. So you'll get a sense of what are the strengths of the collection and who made this possible. So we'll be thanking donors, recognizing the history of the museum, and really taking you on a tour throughout the whole museum. And then we have a whole series of activities that will include lectures and symposia about the collections, collecting, museum architecture, as well as a number of fun social events that will bring people in and help build us, help us look forward to the next 75 years. And probably in something like summer 2011, we'll think about a second part to this show, which we've tentatively called Living Legacies, the next 75 years, which will be an Oregon or Northwest Collects show, where we'll go to friends of the university and the museum and put an exhibition together of what we hope will be promised gifts and works that will help shape the future of our collecting and exhibitions.
You mentioned gifts, and I know the museum has been fortunate to receive a couple of large gifts recently. There was a $1 million gift from the Coeta and Donald Barker Foundation, and a $500,000 gift from the Cheryl and Alan Ford, specifically. Can you tell me how the Jordan Schnitzer is going to put those gifts to use?
Oh, sure. The Barker gift is a named gift for our special exhibitions gallery, which is about 4,000 square feet. It's a wonderful size. It's where the Cuba show is. So 2 to 3 times a year we are able to present major exhibitions there, and a portion of those costs are underwritten by the Barker Endowment, which is, a great start on that. I think, we could use a few more of those. Our exhibition budget can go anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000 a year.
And this is for traveling shows?
Yeah, and it could even be shows that we organize, and we organize with faculty. We're working on 2 more upcoming projects, but I'll get to that when we talk more about the future. The Ford gift is absolutely wonderful because it supports education. So it helps make possible all our K through 12 activities, summer camps, outreach to different groups, both on and off campus. It's broadly used. And again, it's a great start on what we need. So it's wonderful to see members of the community step up. Museums are funny organizations, and I guess like humanities councils to a certain extent, because there's a certain amount of basic support that the university gives us, but then our exhibitions, our educational programs, our publications, all kinds of things that a museum does, that's all supported privately. So we can use all the help we could get, but
Absolutely.
We're really grateful for these.
Yes, it's a great next step, isn't it?
Yeah.
You have a number of constituencies to serve, and you've mentioned most of them. Where do you feel that you need to be developing most? Is it the student constituency, the faculty, the community? Where are you looking to emphasize your efforts?
Well, I mean, I think we want, I don't want to say broadcast, but we are looking at how we serve a number of constituencies at one time. I think from what I've seen so far, we'd really like to build relationships with students at the university stronger than we have now. Students are involved both as interns in the museum. They have classes that come in. They come and use the cafe, they do a lot of private things, but it would be really nice to set up more courses that were directly related to the museum, whether they're kind of practical aspects where they learn how to do exhibitions and other projects, and also just to get them as, docents. Docent force would be great for students. And maybe we have monthly events so students get used to coming to them, co-sponsoring events with us, and make it really, one of the first things on their list instead of, where is that museum? We hope signage has helped with that too.
Does the newly renovated facility allow for things like teaching on the site?
I think it does. You know, we have most of the exhibition spaces on the second floor, and on the first floor where you enter, we have two wonderful rooms on either side. One is our lecture room, which can be used for classes, and the other is a reception area, which could also be used for classes, but also could have larger gatherings. And then we have the Gordon Gilkey Research Center, which is also downstairs and houses a lot of our works on paper, but that is also set up as a seminar room. So all of those could be used at different times. And then we could also, you know, we have a conference room, we could use that for small classes. So there are a number of creative and different options we could look at for how to build that. And then what I'm hoping at some point is that we can work with both faculty and students in inviting ideas, send out proposal forms, ask them to mine works in our collection and develop small exhibitions of those that could be research projects, and give talks, share those with the public. So we really see the museum as a teaching museum and learning in action. So, you know, we'll just have to go through them one at a time and see what we can really accomplish.
You said in a tantalizing way a few minutes ago that we would get back to the topic of other future exhibits.
Oh, yeah.
What else do you have in mind?
Well, we have two major shows that are going to be coming up over the next 2 years that we're actually working on with UO faculty. So one is an English professor, Ben Saunders, who is an expert in many fields, I'm sure, but in this particular one on superheroes in the comics and looking at them from both aesthetic perspectives as well as political, historical, cultural. And the idea of doing a superhero show is really exciting for many reasons. You know, because of the artistry of the work itself and probably how that hasn't been as appreciated as, you know, the storylines or, you know, how these characters have become major hits in movies, things like that. But there's a regional connection with writers and artists who helped create superheroes like Wonder Woman or Superman, and as well as publishing companies. And I think it's going to be a really interesting show that will do to a certain extent what I hope the museum will continue to do and really has a major role, which is to bring many disciplines together and to be able to look at a subject through the arts in a variety of ways. So I think Ben has also, and with the assistance of the Humanities Council, worked on a symposium that will come next fall that will involve a number of different departments and centers that really, everyone has their own perspectives on this, but together we'll come up with something that's more than just the individual parts.
Yes, I was really excited to hear that you had agreed to host the exhibit that will go together with the conference that Ben is planning on this, and it'll happen next fall. The public will be invited not only to the exhibit but also to a number of the lectures, so that will be a big event, and maybe we can talk about that in a year's time.
I would love that. That would be really great. And then, you know, whether, you know, they're lighter things like using the superhero theme in a float for the Eugene parade, so Oregon's represented, or there's some natural things that we should make the most of when we do that, but, you know, appealing to teenage boys who are probably the hardest group to bring into any museum, you know, maybe we'll get them with this too.
Was there another exhibit you meant to mention as in terms of future plans?
Sure, and this one's 2 years off because some of the big shows need to be really organized 2 to 3 years or more away. And this one is on Giuseppe Bossi, who's an 18th century artist who created these beautiful prints of Rome, of views of Rome. And if I think people probably may not know his name, but if you looked at his work, you'd say, oh yeah, I know, there's the Capitol, or there's the amphitheater, or different streets, major buildings. And that's being organized by James Tice in the Architecture School and Jamie Harper, who's in art history. And their take on that, both in terms of what just the sheer magnificence of the artistry, some of these are giant works, multiple printings, is one aspect of it. But again, what does it say about what was important in Rome at the time? What did the artists want to convey about Rome politically, architecturally, otherwise? And then comparing those with similar views of the sites by other artists and what's left out, what's in there. And all of this is based on research that they have been doing for years, I think, with grants on creating a digital a URL, basically, going through this map that was created by a map maker named Noli, who preceded Bossi. And so they've gone through kind of, in a way, this Noli map to pinpoint the areas that Bossi has taken as sites for his drawings, and how all of that goes together. So you can navigate the site online, but then to have a component of actual physical space where you can go in and see the show will be wonderful. And we're working with the Getty on that, and the show will travel, we think, to Princeton and the Newberry Library, and we'll see what else. And maybe it can include a trip to Rome where we go and look at the sites in person.
I think you'll have to build in that piece.
Yeah.
Speaking of architecture and artwork connected with architecture, there is currently, or coming up soon, metalwork from the Margaux Grant Walsh connection, correct?
Yes, and that's actually on view now and will be open tomorrow during the reception as well. It's a beautiful show. It's just absolutely gorgeous with, you know, whether it's, you know, even, I don't say even, but spoons or teapots or brooches, they glow in the galleries, and they're just gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
These are all pieces designed by architects, if I understand correctly.
Right, and architects from all over the world who have designed buildings, but have also, either in large ways or small ways, have created decorative arts objects. So it's kind of a continuation in some ways of an arts and crafts movement, where every object you have is a work of art. You know, you surround yourself with that.
Are most of the objects you have on display for that exhibit on the small side, the spoons and the, yes?
Yeah, they're pretty small, and they're in cases and spotlets, so it's kind of like, let's look at this gem of a case and that one and see, you know, who designed these works and what, you know, whether it's influenced by Art Deco or whatever the influence happens to be. It's really amazing what she's done. I mean, she's a remarkable woman and a UO alum. In her own right, and she'll be here on the 21st, I think, of October, giving a talk at the museum about her collection, probably at 6 p.m. Or no, actually, it's earlier than that, so do check our website for that one.
So always checking the website is a good idea.
It's a really good idea. Yeah. She's an interior architect who's worked with major companies, and many years ago decided that this was a particular interest of hers, is how architectural ideas and designs get translated into these smaller scale forms.
And how long will that show be up and running?
That's through part of January as well.
Okay,
yeah.
So the public and the university community all have the rest of the fall to see both of these shows.
Yes, absolutely.
Tell me what your priority is for acquisitions for the museum. You've got a disparate collection, and you said you're updating the Asian collections to some extent. Where else do you want to focus your energies for acquisitions?
Well, I would like to, part of it is I would like to find out what is really being taught throughout the university, because I know, say, what art and art history strengths were at UVA, and I really need to learn those here. You know, is contemporary photography important? Are old master prints important? You know, what even if we don't have major holdings in them, are there a few works that would really make a big difference so that students could work from actual works of art rather than slides or, you know, PowerPoints, other images. So part of that will be research and figuring out what makes sense in terms of supporting the academic mission. And then otherwise it will be, you know, we have a commitment to Northwest art, building that. There's certainly a lot of areas we could do more in that. From surveys I've done in the past with students, students are interested in art of their time. They really want to know how other people see them, you know, their identity issues and others. So contemporary art, I think, is really important. And because contemporary art now is an international phenomenon, it would be very important, I think, to collect broadly, not just American. As we will with Asian art, which will be really wonderful since our collections are more imperial. To bring those up to the present will be wonderful, so people don't think of cultures as dead cultures, but they continue on, and what do they take from the past. And then I think that as the Cuba show sets out for us, we're going to be very interested in collecting Latin American art. We have some contemporary Cuban art that was given recently through a donor that I kind of brought with me from Virginia, but I think we need to look at that as a long-term interest.
Is there any room for new media art in a traditional museum environment?
Well, there's certainly room, and I hope it will be spotlighted in special exhibitions. That's something we're really looking at within the next 2 years of how to do a major multimedia exhibition. I'd love to have a small video gallery ongoing in the museum where people could either put in their own works, or we could do a monthly program that either relates to other shows or is video art in its own right. So we're going to have to look at that. The hard part with collecting multimedia art is how the format changes. And I think museums are still working out those arrangements with artists of if you have something on tape that you can no longer get that way, can you also get a DVD of that with no extra cost, or how do those things work so you stay current and don't have to keep repairing old equipment. But I think that'll happen. At some point it'll all just come through our computers and then go onto big screens.
Right, and we've only to think of the 8-track to,
Right.
to realize that technology gets outmoded quickly.
Yeah, but it's definitely a strong interest of mine.
And might very well also play favorably with the student population because there's such a digital generation.
No, absolutely. And I think with the digital media program that's at White Stag now, some ways of collaborating with them both here and possibly at White Stag might be great.
Let me just specify that you're talking about the White Stag building in Portland, which is the University of Oregon's outpost in Portland, downtown.
Yeah, a very exciting place.
Yeah. As we get ready to wind up, Jill, I wanted to ask you if you would talk a little bit about your family. From what you've told me, I know that both your husband and your daughter are very much also active in the arts world. Would you tell us just a little about them?
Oh, sure. Well, my husband is Richard Herskowitz, who has been the artistic director of the Virginia Film Festival, and he will be joining us, well, he'll be joining me in December because he's got a festival that he's completing the end of October. But he will be teaching film courses in the spring here, and then looking at the possibility of creating a film festival in Eugene as well that would relate to academic interests. And my daughter Sophie is going to be starting at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York in October. Would love to be a professional actor.
The conversations around the dinner table must be very interesting.
It is, yes, yeah.
We'll look forward to meeting your husband when he comes, and perhaps we can get him for an interview as well.
I'm sure.
The idea of a film festival for Eugene, I think, is one that would appeal to many of us here on campus, so I hope we can foster that idea.
I hope so.
Jill, thank you for taking the time to meet with us today. It's very exciting what's going on over there. We're so pleased to welcome you to the University of Oregon and to Eugene.
Thank you.
We have been speaking with Jill Hartz, the new director of the Schnitzer Museum of Art. Thank you for watching.